Welcome to Pop Culture Weekly with Kyle McMahon from iHeartRadio. Your pop culture news, views, reviews, and celebrity interviews on all the movies, TV, music, and pop culture you crave weekly. Here's Kyle McMahon.
All right, I am here with Jacqueline Coley, the awards editor for Rotten Tomatoes, and we had the biggest, award ceremony of the year last night. What did you think, Jacqueline?
It was really great. I will say this is my third year in attendance, and if I could say that the Oscars managed to be slightly predictable and a little bit boring, I've never enjoyed such predictability so much.
Yeah, it really was. I think it was needed this year in a lot of ways. What did you think about the award winners? And we could start with any of them. Best supporting actor.
Well, Best Supporting Actor with Ke Huy Quan, he was really the front runner since his Gotham win way back in October of last year. So he was the unstoppable train all through this award season. I believe he only lost one contest, which was the BAFTAs, and it went to Barry Keoghan. So he was such a great story. His speech last night was incredible.
Oh my
God. He thanked his on-screen co-star Chunk from the Goonies, who's also his entertainment lawyer, and he was handed his Oscar by Indiana Jones. I mean, it literally was, an Indiana Jones short round reunion that was overlooked by Steven Spielberg. I don't think the Oscar gods could have scripted it better. Yeah,
it was amazing. And so I was hosting a Oscars party, and that brought me to tears. His speech was just so powerful and heartfelt and really spoke to, I think, everybody at that watching or present could relate to his dream, or his speech saying, as he dreamt of this happening, and, he always wondered about giving up and he didn't. And this is, the flowers for that.
I also want to add to, there's definitely flowers. I also want to add to Kevin Feige. I got to see him last night. He was on there hoping for a win by Angela Bassett, who didn't, but he did mention that he actually knows Ke quite well. He's actually in the second season of Loki, and so be on the lookout for him in that one. But the more incredible thing I think about that story with him is he was a technical advisor on the first X-Men. He was actually working still in Hollywood behind the scenes, even in his sort of, I would say, when he was off of being an actor, he was still working in Hollywood. And so they actually go really far back. And according to Feige, he steals season 2. So I'm very much looking forward to seeing that.
Yes, me too. I'm a huge MCU fan. And I am now super excited. I had no idea about that. So I'm super excited for that. Speaking of Angela Bassett, I have mixed feelings. I needed her to win. I freaking love her. She is a queen, and she, oh my God, in Wakanda Forever, I mean, she is just a power. I mean, she's a powerhouse in general, but especially in that. And I think for me, so I lost my mom to pancreatic cancer last year, and watching Wakanda Forever, for me, it's really about grief. That film, and it's so beautifully done, and for it to be a Marvel Studios film, it's not I feel like there will be a segment of the population that doesn't get that part, but for me it hit everything on a list that I could want, and her performance just as a grieving mother is just, oh my God. And then, of course, for the people of color, she would have been the, I believe, second black woman ever to win in that category. Is that correct? Do you happen to know?
No, she would have been the second one if she would have won for Best Actress. There's been supporting actress wins, which included Hattie McDaniel, also Viola Davis, also
that's right. Okay.
But she would have been, again, it's still only a handful.
Yeah.
Like there's still to this day more people who were of non-Asian descent portraying someone Asian have won more Oscars than Black women total.
That's insane.
So that is still a very difficult stat to sort of wrap your head around. In fact, NPR got in a little bit of trouble because they had to put out that Michelle Yeoh, when she did win Best Actress last night for Everything Everywhere All at Once, is only the second woman of color, but she is the very first Oscar person to be an actress who identifies as Asian. There have been previous Oscar nominees, but they did not identify as Asian because of the miscegenation laws back in Hollywood at that time. If you identified as Asian, you would essentially be relegated to not being a leading lady. And so at that time, I believe Merle, she did not identify as Asian despite her Asian descent.
Wow. That's crazy that we're still in this position and still having to talk about this. I every year I hope that it is I don't want to say a non-issue. I hope that it becomes something that we don't have to keep saying that it's a problem, but every year it continues to seem to be a problem. But speaking of that category with Angela Bassett, Jamie Lee Curtis, her speech was absolutely incredible as well. I really felt that too. And just how I just felt she was so graceful in saying, this isn't my win, this is an us win, and then named a bunch of people. Were you expecting her to win that, or did you think Angela?
Yeah, I didn't think Angela, actually. I'd actually picked Carrie Condon for a couple of reasons. I love Angela. I was hugely supportive of the film. And I even wrote in our predictions at RottenTomatoes.com, I was like, if there was ever a category where I hope to be wrong, it's this one. I was wrong, but not in the way I was hoping. Angela, for the MCU film, I want to be very clear with this. I love the Oscars. I've dedicated my life to it. But Jamie Lee Curtis, when she won that SAG, really, I think, cemented herself for that one. It was, in my opinion, a bit of a surprise, but she was in the Best Picture winning movie. You can't really be mad at it in the sense of like, was it really Jamie Lee, or was it the fact that everybody loved Everything Everywhere All at Once? And unfortunately, between the two supporting performances, Jamie Lee Curtis also probably had the added bonus of being very well known in Hollywood. So some people would be like, I love the movie. If I'm going to choose between which of the two to vote for, I know Jamie, she's my friend. I know people hate to hear that is the way people vote, that the only way they vote is based on who's the best performance. But then I would ask you, is the most qualified person the one that gets the job?
I love that. And how about for Brendan Fraser? He did amazing.
Yeah, I think the big sort of bow that you can put on last night is the year, not of the underdogs, the year of people that Hollywood counted out. They discounted. These were not underdogs. These were people that Hollywood said, sit here, say this, don't do else. And once they stopped doing that, they didn't have use for them. This is true of Michelle Yeoh. You could say this of Jamie Lee Curtis. You could say it of all four of the acting nominees, but especially of Brendan Fraser, who really had it rough of recent years, really sort of had to fight for even the right to speak to things like, what he is in this current role as a former action star, the fact that, he is aged and changed, and he's really owning this next chapter in a way that I don't think he or anyone would have pegged if you saw him back in like a movie like Airheads or Encino Man. But one of the great pictures I saw this morning is of Key and Brendan in Encino Man shaking hands on top of a picture of them last night. And just this idea of like, would you have thought, but that is the best thing. These guys were not the type of stars that are supposed to win Oscars. In a lot of ways, even somebody like Colin Farrell, after his years of being Hollywood's bad boy, coming back into it to be a really respected actor in this very Irish film, like Banshees, that is also sort of, Hollywood put you in a corner, but you decided to break out.
I love that, and I didn't really even think about that until you just said that all four of these were kind of, and I don't want to say outcasts, but very much kind of outcasts. You have a woman of a certain age with Michelle Yeoh who is Asian, who as we well know, aren't getting their flowers for when they are getting good parts for themselves, aren't getting the flowers for that. And so this year, I now that you say that, it really is kind of kind of a nice comeuppance, I think, in a lot of ways.
Yeah, and it's not necessarily a reflection of Hollywood and where Hollywood is. This is everywhere, everything all at once is the outlier. Avatar and Top Gun are the blueprint. That is actually what people are spending money on. That is what is keeping the movie industry afloat. But these films, and for this film to be rewarded, it is an interesting tribute. But there's another interesting piece today in the LA Times where they sort of speak to the fact that Everything Everywhere All at Once, as much as it's an original indie, it rests upon the shoulders of the MCU and the idea that this audience is very familiar with both multiverses and with that sort of very high octane, lots of cuts, very quippy action movie, which is inherent in the Marvel DNA.
Yeah, I was really excited because I realized that I didn't have a 4K copy of the film of Everywhere. So I went on Amazon after the Oscars last night, and I was like, why is this not in my library? So I bought it, and normally, I would get it the next day. It's out like 2 weeks. So I was really happy for that because I feel like, as you're saying, like everybody I feel like is going to see Avatar and what's it called? Top Gun if they haven't. It was nice to see this, this kind of artsy, not really mainstream film be on kind of back order. I was really happy to see that.
Yeah, and what's more interesting about that one, sorry, there's a little bit of construction outside my door.
No problem.
What's really interesting about that one too is that it is the small indie film. It was produced by A24, which is a very small studio. I mean, this is the studio that made movies like Moonlight and The Lighthouse, very artsy, avant-garde cinema. In addition to that, however, this was a film where they really did not do the traditional Hollywood promotion. They didn't do the glossy Vanity Fair variety covers. They did not do the very expensive campaigns inside these Hollywood homes. They kept this to be a regular, almost release schedule type awards promotion campaign where they go to, certain media outlets, they do traditional type screenings, they really do work the pavement, and that sort of, I would say, back to basics approach proved dividends as the most awarded film of the night. Yeah.
And how about for Best Picture? I mean, as you had stated before, it was kind of sweeping everywhere. Was that kind of a non, like you were totally expecting that?
I did predict that one on Rotten Tomatoes, and I will say overall there were very few surprises. The Brendan Fraser, for as much as his was not a surprise win, it was in sort of the contest leading up to it. Austin Butler had amassed way more Best Actor prizes than Brendan Fraser. That was not surprising. I figured Everything Everywhere All at Once was going to take the top prize because it took every indicative top prize leading up to that, with the exception of the BAFTA. What was surprising for me is that as much as I believed in Everything Everywhere All at Once, as happy as I was for the film to win and succeed, the part of it that was slightly in the back of my mind was just the fact that I had heard so many raves about Top Gun that I was concerned. And if you were in the audience last night, when that movie came up, the cheers were incredibly, incredibly loud for that film as well. I'd be interested to see what came in second in the voting.
Yeah, that is interesting. And I kind of feel like it almost would have been, I hate to say this, but an insult in many ways. And I loved Top Gun Maverick, but I feel like, it kind of would have been an insult in so many ways to the other films. You know what I mean?
I don't disagree that one would not have sat down, would not have gone down as well. But it was one of those films where I'm like, it's a very popular movie among Academy members, and I won't deny that.
Yeah. Yeah, and it is, it's very, I did love it, but it is just kind of very, generic, you know what I mean?
It's not intended nor designed to reinvent the wheel. It is a meat and potatoes war games movie, and that is it. It's just done with a level of filmmaking you don't often see.
Right, I love that, and I want to get this name right. Ruth E. Carter, who won for Best Costume Design for Black Panther: Wakanda Forever. was, I believe, she is the only Black woman to win 2 Oscars, and she won them both for Black Panther films, which I also love. And she thanked her mom, who had just passed away, which I thought was incredible. But what does that say about us? And especially in the entertainment industry, that so often from certain groups we get called woke and we're too this and too that. But then in our own awards ceremonies, you have the only Black woman to win 2 Oscars is in a category that's not one of the big guys. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, no, I absolutely agree with that. I mean, also you will find with the Oscars that oftentimes it is the below the line folks that end up garnering more acclaim than the above the line folks. And Ruthie Cardi, as a Black female costume designer, let me be very clear, she's a governor at the Academy Awards, meaning she's part of their leadership team, but she's a rarity. That is not the average costume designer that is working in Hollywood. They're typically white women. And that is just the facts. And the most awarded costume designer in history is Edith Head, a white woman for many years. You think of the names like Sandy Powell, Jacqueline Durant, all of them are very prominent costume designers. Ruthie Carter with 2 Oscar wins is joining that pantheon. But let's be real, 2 people, Denzel Washington, Denzel Washington and Ryan Coogler have been responsible for more Black women getting Oscars than half of the members of the Academy. It's absolutely insane that when you look at the concentration of power, what Ryan was able to do in just a few short years is literally what Denzel did with not just his work, but then working later in Fences and so on and so forth. It is so difficult sometimes for marginalized communities to have films that break through, that oftentimes when it does happen, it does feel like it is beyond exceptional and should therefore be recreated. And I think it's something that should be applauded in the fact that Ryan Coogler got not only Ruthie Carter 2 Oscar nominations by having her be the costume designer for his film and execute her vision, but he also got Hannah Bleekler, the production designer. And that could even continue even more as we look to the fact that he just produced this later installment of Creed 3.
Right. I do love that. I was talking every year. I talk to Elvira for a Halloween episode, and we were talking last year about Oscar So White. And what we were specifically talking about was traditionally for her career, it's been horror so white. And she said that, and it really made me think that, wow, this could really happen. Horror, which I'm a huge fan of, has really have been having these very people of color, LGBTQ, all of these marginalized communities that have been kind of rising up a lot in horror, whether it's behind the scenes or in front of the camera or whatever. And you have people like Nia, Nia DaCosta. Thank you.
Nia DaCosta, yeah.
Who is such a visionary with Candyman. And you have, people of color and in marginalized communities that are bubbling up through horror and making huge names for themselves. And it got me thinking, I'm kind of thinking that may be a way to break through. If you can't, if it's taken however 95 years or whatever for one Black woman to win 2 Oscars in 95 years, maybe this niche of horror or, whatever it is able to help that come into the mainstream, somebody like Nia DaCosta. You know what I'm saying?
I think that's definitely part of it. The Academy Awards is not completely averse to horror films, but I will say, unfortunately, Everything Everywhere All at Once as a big genre, grand scale, avant-garde, big idea type movie like that is actually not typically the type of filmmaking that is rewarded. I mean, everyone talks about something like Citizen Kane, and yes, it did end up becoming this film that people respected later, but it was not at the time. It was actually quite polarizing of a film, just because of the departure to the storytelling, and the way that he sort of shot it was not something that they agreed with. Horror can be the same thing. I mean, Silence of the Lambs is one of the few films to ever sweep the big four. That is a horror film. Also, Shape of Water, another film that had a lot, is considered to be a horror fantasy. But when we really talk about horror as the pure art form that audiences are talking about, things that are coming from the minds of folks like, studios like Blumhouse and Shudder, and minds like Sam Raimi and Ari Aster, those films have actually still been traditionally rejected. And so even though they come from marginalized communities, it doesn't help them break through any more than, say, Hereditary did for Ari Aster, or Us did for Jordan Peele. And Get Out, another example of a horror film, also a comedy. And although that film did incredibly well, it got Jordan an Oscar nomination, an Oscar win and several nominations. It still came up short with Best Picture.
That is very true. However, what I'm thinking is, so look at Jordan Peele. There are very, very few directors outside of, people that like us that do this all the time, that the general population could name. M. Night Shyamalan, Jordan Peele, Steven Spielberg, Jim, Cameron. Jordan Peele has been able to do that, and relatively quickly, kind of in his, so far, kind of like his niche of this social commentary / horror, with a comedic element. But maybe that is the way to, my thinking is, if the general population starts, noticing these people like Jordan Peele, like, oh my God, I've got to see every Jordan Peele movie, that kind of raises the
No, I get what you
know what I'm saying?
The bar of it. Yeah, no, actually, to that extent, I will say any director, but especially directors that are able to make themselves the IP, and the directors that I speak to this, you can recognize people like Christopher Nolan, people like Jordan Peele, obviously Tarantino, even Martin Scorsese and Steven Spielberg to a lesser extent. If they can make a reputation for the types of films that they make being films that people want to keep coming back from, that is a golden ticket to a lot of leveling of the playing field. Because the thing we're starting to realize now is stars are less driving factors into what people watch. And that is actually a direct relationship to the stars. People no longer trust movie stars to pick good movies to be in, but they do trust directors and writers to write and direct good movies. And so if you like a director, they're like, you have enough control over this situation to make this something I will enjoy, way more than if I say, hey, I really love Reese Witherspoon, everything she's going to be in, I'm going to watch. Because as we've seen in recent years, especially as, studios and streamers just start putting out more content, the quality level has decreased. And so they're not as it's not like it used to be like, every Reese Witherspoon movie, it didn't matter, we would show up or whatever. It's just not that case anymore, but it is with directors.
I love that. I didn't think about that until you said that, and that makes so much sense. Jordan Peele, for instance, is one of those directors for me. And again, I'm kind of the outlier because I do this every day. But for me, I don't watch his trailers when they come out, because I think trailers give away way too much today, and I don't want to be spoiled. I know I'm going to see it anyway, so I won't watch it. Same thing with like MCU movies. I'm going to see them. So what I do with trailers is, if it's a movie that I don't know if I'm going to see, I'll watch it until I decide if I want to see it or not. Then I close my eyes, because I feel like they give so much away. And Jordan Peele is just one of those guys, one of those talents that, if he's putting it out, I'm going to watch it. I know that I'm going to get some kind of enjoyment out of it if I don't absolutely love it. So, I love that fact that somebody like him can kind of, say, okay, if inadvertently saying to the Academy or whoever, all right, I'm going to make a name for myself anyway, and then you won't be able to deny me. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah, no, exactly. Being undeniable is always the the best thing, because that's actually what happened to Power of the Dog last year.
That's
Everyone
a good point.
wondered why Coda won, is because Power of the Dog was not undeniable. People couldn't deny that that was the movie that they loved, wanted to vote for, was the movie that was going to be the thing. And whenever there's that little, as we like to say, wobble in the final weeks and months, and even happened with Everything Everywhere All at Once. I saw a lot of takes towards the end of people questioning, is this the movie? Is this the thing? It ended up being just fine, but if it's a film where those legs are shaky, when they start asking those questions, it means they will look elsewhere. And if there is a film waiting in the wings, if there is an option that they can turn to and feel that kinship, they will always go there. And so to your point, if it's kinship, if it's something that they love, i.e. making it inevitable, because if you love something, you're going to vote for it. Even in your most rational brain, you will vote for what you love. I think in that respect, you will always find a place.
Nice. 2023. What are you expecting? What are you hearing buzz on? What are you excited about?
Oh God, the tragedy of my career is 2 minutes after I put the previous baby to bed, everyone's already like, when are you going to do the next one?
Right.
No, that's exactly what Oscars is. I can't complain. It's the best job out there. No, this year is going to be a very interesting year. I think a lot of people this year with Elvis and maybe a couple of the other, with the Fabelmans, Steven Spielberg doing his family, or you look at something like Blonde, where we had a lot of biopics. I have a feeling if that's something that exhausted you this year, next year is really going to send you over the edge, because we have a new Napoleon coming. We have Flowers, The Killers of Flower Moon, which is a historical biopic by Martin Scorsese. Martin Scorsese is also doing a movie on Teddy Roosevelt. We also have a new film for Oppenheimer coming out. So there's going to be a ton of what I like to consider possibly prestige, but very, very much auteur biopics that I think are going to have folks talking, and musicals. We have The Color Purple that is on the way this year. Wicked's not far after that. And so there's a Wonka is also later this year, as well as Dune 2. But the one I think most folks in the near to the immediate future are really looking towards, that they're gonna really get excited for when we get towards summer, is Barbie, but also Fast 10. Those are not Oscar movies necessarily, but I just personally feel like when we look over Rotten Tomatoes, we have our most anticipated of 2024. There's tons of Oscar movies on there, but I can't think of two movies that people are more anxiously anticipating.
I am weirdly enough intrigued to see Barbie. Just from some of the buzz that I've heard about it, and from some of the early, production screenings of people saying it's a different take than what you would expect. Like, it's not like, I was expecting like stereotypically a female girls movie. I mean, a girls kids movie. And from what I'm hearing, it is very atypical, which I think could be interesting if it ends up certainly being that way. Fast 10, I can't help some of those dumb movies that I like, and Fast 10 is just one of those that I too am expecting. Super Mario Brothers, I also think is going to be huge.
Yes,
I'm thinking, and it's got some great talent behind it, and I'm shocked that in all this time, I mean, they had that one kind of weird movie, I think it was from the 80s or the early 90s or something, that Super Mario Brothers movie that was kind of like a weird cult thing. I'm shocked that it's taken them this long to do like a big budget Mario Brothers movie. So I'm curious about that. What are you excited to see? Is there any big ones or small ones that you're like, I can't wait till I get the screener for this or that?
I mean, I will admit that I am a kind of a sucker for the Mission Impossible movies. I will always kind of sign up for them. I think the movie I'm most like, just get me to this theater, I really want to see it, is probably The Marvels, actually.
Me too.
Which is the new Nia DaCosta, actually, directing that one, which stars Brie Larson, Tatiana Parrish from WandaVision, as well as Miss Marvel herself from the Marvel TV show Miss Marvel. And just that combination is enough. Like, they didn't need to tell me anything else, and I was about it. I particularly loved the first Captain Marvel, especially as people expect what people expected from that movie, and then it went on to gross $1 billion.
Yeah.
I absolutely love that about it. It is great, and it teams up Samuel L. Jackson and Brie Larson, who, if people have forgotten in the years prior, they have some of the best on-set and interview chemistry of any two co-stars I've ever seen. Those two have a blast together every time they're sitting next to each other, and so I really can't wait to watch them just promote the movie, let alone be in it together.
Yeah, I'm in the same boat. I cannot wait to see the Marvels. I'm a huge MCU nerd anyway, and I loved Captain America. I love anything with Samuel L. Jackson is like almost always amazing anyway in some way, and so him and Brie Larson and actually the whole cast, and as you said, Nia DaCosta directing. For me, it's just like a cornucopia of can't wait to see it. You know what I mean?
Yes. Sorry about that. My stupid computer, like all of a sudden I was like, what is that?
Oh.
Sorry about that.
Oh, no, I didn't even hear anything.
Okay.
Yeah, but and what about for award season? Are you hearing? I mean, we're obviously, not even 24 hours past Oscars, but are you hearing any buzz at all about, I'm making this up, but Napoleon, he put in a great performance in Napoleon or whatever?
I mean, the ones that people are most buzzing about right now that could also have Oscar buzz is one, Oppenheimer. Again, love a good biopic, and Christopher Nolan definitely knows how to blow stuff up. In addition to that, we also have Barbie, which again is a broad movie, but the script for that, written by two Oscar nominated screenwriters, is definitely one that folks are keeping an eye on that way. But really the one that I think might sweep a lot of awards is Dune 2. That is the follow-up to Dune, which already had a huge technical achievement. And for folks that know Dune Part 2, the second part of this adaptation, a lot of the drama and sort of I would say huge amounts of what we're going to experience in the second half of the book are going to be even more, I think, cinematic and moving, and the performances, I think, are also going to be much more equaled in this one, whereas in last time it was more of a technical achievement. Dune Part 2 has absolutely everything in its power to be one of the most awarded movies in 2023, and that's saying something, because it will be going up against, like I said, Oppenheimer, which has a similar ilk.
Yeah. Awesome. Jacqueline, where can, if somebody wants to follow you, where's the best place to do it and get all your good stuff?
You can find me everywhere on that, Jacqueline. You can also find me on the pages of Rotten Tomatoes. I highly advise you to look at our Oscar coverage recap. We have everything from last night, as well as the final tally of our awards leaderboard, which just posted today. And yeah, you can find me pretty much there anytime. And I will hopefully be back on the road at the film festival soon as we get back into this next award season, which officially has just kicked off.
Thank you so much. I really appreciate it.
Thank you for listening to Pop Culture Weekly. Hear all the latest at popcultureweekly.com.